Typically when you go for a dive, it usually starts the night before when all the scientists discuss what are the objectives for that dive the next morning and so on, and you start thinking about it and you get a little bit nervous no matter how often you've been, and you don't drink too much water because there are no toilets on submarines, so you tend to make sure you lower the intake of the fluids, have a good sleep, get up early in the morning. Things start about 7 o'clock in the morning. They prep you for the dive by 8 o'clock. You go in the submarine by about 8:30, it's lifted off the deck, and you're usually in the water by about 8:45. It depends obviously on how deep you're diving, but when we dive to 2 kilometres or something like that, it takes about an hour and a half to get down to the bottom. We spend about 5 hours on the bottom and another hour or hour and a half coming back up again. Probably one of the most uncomfortable periods of one of these dives is when you first go into the water, or worse, when you finally come back up. That's because you're like a cork bobbing on the sea. So it's a little bit like what I imagine being inside a washing machine is like. So looking out the window is not a favourite pastime because it kind of reminds you that you're not exactly straight and level. Typically the subs can be between say 14 and 26 tonnes, but the living space is only 2 metres in diameter. And I'm 187, so it's pretty cosy when you have one observer and 2 pilots in there. About halfway through the dive, the pilot will often slow things, put it down on the bottom if we've finished sampling, and we'll all break out the sandwiches and eat these at 2.5 k's below the seafloor. When we dive on one of these volcanoes, it's the same as going down on Mount Ruapehu at night on a tractor with a torchlight. That's what you see. So our science tells us we have this big volcano because with sonar we can map the dimensions of the volcano and so on. But when you go down in a submarine, you have that little torchlight on that tractor, that's the speed at which you go, and you're trying to find the ski hut on Mount Ruapehu. But the beauty about the science that we do is that we look for those plumes. And so rather than try and find the individual chimneys from which the plumes or the hydrothermal fluids are coming, we look for the smoke. So it's way easier to find the smoke than it is to find the chimney itself. Some of the volcanoes that we see are certainly the size, or equal to the size of Ruapehu, 25 kilometres across their base, 2 kilometres standing up from the sea floor. We see many volcanoes which are the size of Edgecumbe and so on. We don't bother with volcanoes the size of Mount Eden because we think they're too small.